Hey all, Glenn Kirschner here. Please enjoy this video on the Political Voices Network.
So let's talk about, was there anything you're surprised about? I mean, I think when it finally happens, remember we kept saying this, that, justice seems like it's never going to come, and then it comes all at once. And when you're reading the 7 counts, you're just like, oh my God, like this is really as serious and the first time in our history as we think it is, right? Trump has been charged with 7 counts. Well, obviously I had to review the Manhattan District Attorney. That was 34 counts of falsifying business records. So we're only 2 indictments in here, but talk to us about this particular one, anything you were surprised about. And it was espionage and obstruction, correct? And tell us about conspiracy.
Conspiracy.
But tell us, is that different than just regular obstruction of justice? Conspiracy to obstruct, is that a different statute?
So obstruction of justice would be me telling a witness, you better not snitch on me, when I knew there was a criminal investigation going on into my alleged crimes. That's obstructing. If you and I, Steph, get together and say, you know what, here's what we're going to do. You and I are both going to go at that witness and try to prevent them from testifying against me. Now I've entered into a conspiracy to obstruct justice because I'm now in an agreement to commit a criminal offense. So first of all, I wasn't shocked at any of the charges, but I will say I was really pleased. There's several charges for mishandling classified documents.
Yeah.
There is a violation of our nation's espionage laws, the Espionage Act, by mishandling, perhaps disseminating national defense information. That's a big deal. And the conspiracy to obstruct is really consequential because that means Jack Smith has evidence that at least one other person, and likely multiple people, were part of Donald Trump's criminal conspiracy to try to get away with these crimes. The reason that's so important is really twofold. One, it means that there are people who have every reason to flip or who have already flipped against Donald Trump. So I can't wait for the indictment to be unsealed so I can read the conspiracy indictment and see if it names the co-conspirators, to see if it charges the co-conspirators, or to see if it says individual 1, Donald Trump's former chief of staff, is an unindicted co-conspirator. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's Mark Meadows.
Yeah.
So there's so many opportunities for an investigation to move forward when there is a conspiracy charge.
Does that mean, is that a separate charge, or does that mean witness tampering? I thought I also heard that out there.
Charge. A conspiracy to commit a crime. Let's say we conspire to commit a bank robbery. Mm-hmm. So you go out and you steal the getaway car. I go out and buy a gun. And then we both say, you know what? Stupid idea. We're not going to rob the bank. Guess what? We've already committed the crime of conspiracy to rob the bank. Why? Because we entered into the agreement to do it, and we did at least one thing in the direction of committing the crime, which is called the overt act. A conspiracy is separately punishable. You get a separate sentence for being in a conspiracy as you get for committing the crime you agreed to commit.
2 things I like about it being in Florida is, one thing, I think, most prosecutors are saying it's because Jack Smith appears to be really confident he can get a conviction anywhere, that, it is a more favorable venue than D.C. for Trump. But, number 2, I was going to say, I'm sorry, I lost the thought. No, but number 2 is what we mentioned earlier, Chris, the rocket docket, that he can't do his usual delay in Florida. Is that another factor, do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. If it was in the Eastern District of Virginia, which I'm more familiar with because it's right across the river from federal court in D.C., that is the rocket docket. I think they coined the phrase, and they go to trial very quickly. In a case like this, Steph, with a former president and what is probably going to be several co-conspirators, this is going to be a fairly long, drawn-out affair. Let me just say the law, the Speedy Trial Act, says we're supposed to take somebody to trial within 70 days of him being arraigned. His arraignment will be on Tuesday. No federal case is ever tried. Rarely is a federal case ever tried within 70 days. The defense wants more time. They move for continuances. Yeah. Motions are filed, which stops the speedy trial clock from running. So if I had to guess, I would say we're going to see a trial date set somewhere between about 8 and 12 months from the day he's arraigned in court next week.
Huh.
Wow.
Wow.
That's going to put it right in the middle of
primary season.
Yeah. like
It is. And
smack
most
dab.
importantly, we need to get this case tried and resolved before the election, because the stuff of nightmares, as I was discussing on air with Jen Psaki the other day, the stuff of nightmares for me is that the case is still pending. Donald Trump gets reelected. He appoints another corrupt attorney general and instructs that person to dismiss the criminal case against him, or he pardons himself.
I was going to ask that.
I don't think presidential self-pardons are a thing. I think the courts would strike them down, because that would put a criminal president above the Supreme Court. I don't think they're going to sanction that. But still, this is the stuff that keeps me up at night.
On the sunny side, Travis, our dream could come true. He could be running from prison, third party. That would be fantastic. Okay.
But if he wins, he could pardon himself and all this will go away.
No, but if he runs third party, Biden's going to win. Okay. So, Glenn, the other thing, we were just saying, do we need any other witnesses except Donald Trump against himself? Oh, my God.
No.
Lordy, there are more tapes.
These
tapes that CNN of him, I mean, is this a prosecutor's dream? He's saying all of it. Look at this is secret, classified. I'm not allowed, but look at it.
Yeah.
I mean, okay.
Steph, it is a prosecutor's dream, and what I want to set everybody's mind at ease, because the rules of evidence say a prosecutor can introduce any flippant statement of a defendant that the prosecutor wants to introduce. So what the prosecutors will do is introduce very surgically every incriminating statement of Donald Trump. Not only one incriminating statement, but what they will do is they'll play one statement that says, hey, I declassified the documents with my mind, or the minute I took them from the White House, they were all automatically declassified. And then the prosecutors will immediately thereafter play Donald Trump saying, I'd like to show you this, but it's classified, 6 months after he left the presidency. What you're doing is you're convicting Donald Trump using only his own words. But here's the best news. Whereas the rules of evidence allow prosecutors to put all of the incriminating statements before the jury, they're called statements of a party opponent, the rules prohibit Donald Trump's lawyers from putting a single statement Donald Trump made out of court before the jury. So the jury will never hear him stand up and say, the Presidential Records Act, I had every right to take it, because that's inadmissible evidence. The defense is not allowed to put it in. That's why in the court of public opinion, this case looks one way. In a court of law, a novice prosecutor could convict Donald Trump in his or her sleep.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, I'm just a layperson, but I'm like, oh my God, this is like the most evidence I've ever seen. You mentioned Mark Meadows. You said Mark Meadows testifies in grand jury about both the insurrection and Trump's classified documents, crimes, indictments drawn nearer by the day. You said, under what circumstances did Meadows testify in the grand jury? Did he plead guilty under seal and become a cooperating witness, or was he testifying under a grant of immunity? Important distinction. I mean, that's going to be interesting to find out. Is he implicated in? Well, clearly he's implicated in both of these crimes, right? January 6th and the documents. But what do you think is happening with him?
I think Jack Smith went hard, appropriately so. I think he forced or convinced Mark Meadows to plead guilty. It's under seal, so it hasn't yet been disclosed publicly. To plead guilty, to accept responsibility for his crimes, and to agree to testify truthfully against Trump and anybody else about whom he has information that they committed crimes. Here's why I say that. If he's testifying under a grant of immunity, then you're giving him a pass for all of his crimes, and his credibility is lower than what, because the defense attorney at trial will argue you can't trust a word out of his mouth, because that prosecutor right there gave Mark Meadows a pass, said you will never have to spend a minute in jail for the crimes you committed. So Mark Meadows is going to say anything that prosecutor wants him to say to convict Donald Trump. That's a powerful line of cross-examination that I've dealt with hundreds of times. So we have a concrete example of a chief of staff to the president of the United States committing crimes together with or to cover up the crimes of a president, Richard Nixon and Bob Haldeman. Bob Haldeman didn't get an immunity deal. Bob Haldeman didn't plead guilty and become a cooperator. So what did the prosecutors do? They took Bob Haldeman to trial. They convicted him of obstruction, conspiracy, and perjury, and they put him in prison. So Mark Meadows, I believe, has been held accountable for his crimes, is flipped. He's cooperating.
Wow.
And ultimately, he will still see the inside of a prison.
Oh, this is a yay. One last one real quick. We're long as usual. Someone tweeted up to 34 House Republicans texted with Meadows about overthrowing the 2020 election. They wanted to keep up the fight, make sure Trump stayed in the White House. Considering Meadows pled out and flipped, there are 34 nervous traitors today. We keep asking that. When are the congressional shoes going to drop here? Particularly the ones trying to, falsely accuse Biden of something to distract, right?
Yeah, if I can quote and paraphrase Al Pacino from Scent of a Woman, Jack Smith's just getting warmed up. I mean, I think we are going to see insurrectionists in Congress potentially held accountable for what they did. At least that is my fervent hope.
Republicans say they won't cut Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid. But can honest, hard-working middle-class Americans really believe what these politicians say? Republicans said they wouldn't overturn Roe v. Wade. Here's what Supreme Court Justices Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Coney Barrett said during their Senate confirmation hearings.
Roe v. Wade, it is a precedent of the United States Supreme Court. A good judge will consider it as precedent of the United States Supreme Court.
Roe v. Wade. It's settled as a precedent of the Supreme Court.
Roe is not a super precedent, but that doesn't mean that Roe should be overruled.
Well, we saw how that turned out. They played us for fools. Tell your elected officials to keep their hands off of our Social Security and health care benefits. Fool me once. Let Majority Rule was responsible for this message. LetMajorityRule.org is a project of the Marvin Lucas Super PAC, which is responsible for and paid for this ad and is not affiliated with or authorized by any political campaign or candidate or candidates committee.